So we've spent the week, I think, as most other college football fans have, looking at the transfer portal, both some of the needs that LSU will need to address in 2023 in the transfer portal and what the transfer portal has to offer and how LSU can fill those needs. And a lot of the position groups, we kind of know what are position groups of need and what doesn't really need to be addressed. But there's one position group in general that we won't know the future of. And it depends on the decision of one guy. We'll get into that on today's edition of Locked On LSU.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we are part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. You can find us on your preferred podcast platform, Amazon Music, Spotify. But you can also find us on YouTube as well. So you can listen as well as watch the podcast. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I'm your host, as I am every day. I'm a diehard LSU fan. I graduated from LSU. I've been covering LSU football since 2016, and I'm now a sports talk radio host in Nashville, Tennessee. So the future of LSU football, or at least in 2023, kind of depends on the decision of one player. I want to get into exactly what I mean by that. But before I do that, I want to let y'all know that Omaha Steaks is a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. So order with complete confidence today, knowing that you are ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com, use promo code LOCKED ON at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. Omaha Steaks, the best gift that you can give. Now, looking at some of the needs for LSU in 2023 and how they can address those needs in the transfer portal, I think that we've all kind of assumed and we all kind of know what those needs are, regardless of some of the transfer portal announcements. So, for example, it was announced today that Dre Jenkins is entering the NFL draft, which doesn't necessarily come as a surprise to me, at least. But I don't think that wide receiver is necessarily a position group of need for LSU in 2023. Keyshawn Boutte coming back. Of course, Jack Besh is entering the transfer portal as well. But with a lot of talent coming in and a lot of talent returning, that might not be a position group that LSU puts at the top of the list of high priority. On the other hand, defensive back absolutely is. And I kind of knew that without even needing to see what players enter the transfer portal, because defensive back has been a position of need and a position of depth all season long. Offensive line the same way. We all knew that PJ Ojulari most likely was going to enter the transfer portal, and that was going to present a need in pass rush and defensive line. So we all kind of understand, we at least have a general idea of some needs, some depth needs for LSU in 2023. But we won't know if quarterback is a position of need in the transfer portal until Jayden Daniels makes his decision of where he is going to be in 2023. Will Jayden Daniels choose to exercise his final year of eligibility and come back next year in the 2023 season? Or will Jayden Daniels enter the NFL draft? That's the golden question. And that's what I'm waiting for before I can make an assumption about what LSU needs to do at the quarterback position in 2023. Now, first and foremost, where he's going to be in the Citrus Bowl. That totally depends on his health. It depends on where he decides to go in 2023. In terms of his health, Brian Kelly said last week in his press conference that Jayden Daniels would need about 7 to 10 days of recovery. That he was going to take about a week off of practice. So that would leave him right now where it stands, ready to come back to practice any day now. If Jayden Daniels does decide to come back to LSU in 2023, I think that we can expect him in the Citrus Bowl. And we will get into all the Citrus Bowl stuff as that game gets a little bit closer. But like I mentioned, he is draft eligible. He does have 1 year left of eligibility. So what is he thinking? What is Jayden Daniels going to do in 2023? Brian Kelly was asked that question on his radio show about a month ago. So again, keep in mind that a lot has changed in this past month, potentially. Maybe Jayden Daniels has had a change of heart since then, one way or another. But this was Brian Kelly on his radio show. This was November 10th, about what he thinks Jayden Daniels is going to do and the program's plan put in place for Jayden Daniels to come up with that decision? This was Brian Kelly on his radio show last month.
Yeah, it's too early. I think Jayden obviously has the ability to go into the NFL draft. We do evaluations. I bring in an outside consultant to do evaluations for the players. Those have been completed, and he has all that information. And look, he understands that he's beginning to kind of put himself in a really good position, but he's a smart kid, and he knows that whatever decision he makes, he's going to make based upon where he can obviously help himself. And so I'm pretty confident that he'll make the right decision, and we'll give him all the information necessary to do that. Yeah, it's too early.
So, I mean, not a ton of peek behind the curtain there, but I think the biggest takeaways was at least as of November 10th, Jayden Daniels had not made his mind up yet of exactly what he wanted to do, which he shouldn't probably on November 10th when they're in the middle of the season. But I think another thing is that LSU has been providing counseling and people to come in to help him make that decision. So from my perspective, the pros and cons for Jayden Daniels entering the NFL draft. And I'll start with the pros. I mean, going in the NFL draft, like, you have the opportunity to make NFL money. Sometimes some guys just want to get in the league, make their money, and then, enjoy it from there. Jayden Daniels has proven a lot this season. I've looked at a bunch of NFL mock drafts, and there are only going to be more that come over the next few months. I know that I'm going to be inundated with NFL mock drafts over the next few months once we get into the spring. But my consensus is he's a projected fourth or fifth round pick. So, I mean, he's not going to be signing, a massive deal. He's not going to be a starting quarterback anywhere in the league anytime soon. But, projected fourth or fifth round pick, he's going to land somewhere, maybe potentially on a practice squad, and he's going to be able to make some NFL money. But the crazy thing is here, Mel Kiper came out with his position rankings. I mentioned it on yesterday's podcast that Joe Delario was listed as the seventh ranked pass rusher in this year's draft. But Mel Kiper has Jayden Daniels as the fifth ranked quarterback in this year's draft. If Jayden Daniels does decide to declare for the NFL draft, he has him one spot ahead of Hendon Hooker, who, of course, will be out for the next season with a torn ACL. So that was kind of a surprise to me. In a fairly quarterback-heavy draft, Jayden Daniels is ranked as the fifth quarterback in this class. So that's the pro for Jayden Daniels is there's going to be an NFL team out there that likes his potential, that likes how much he has improved over this past year and sees, hey, maybe, we'll spend a late round, we'll, throw in a late round pick on Jayden Daniels and see if he can contribute to this football team in the future. But where it stands right now, I don't see any NFL team out there looking at Jayden Daniels and saying that is the building block for our future. Jayden Daniels is going to be our quarterback of the future. And this is, one of the cons to entering the NFL draft and rather one of the pros of staying at LSU. I mentioned all of the progress that he has made over this past year. Compare the Florida State game to the Alabama game. I mean, Jayden Daniels has made leaps and strides and bounds and has improved immensely just over a few months. So that's the pro of staying at LSU, is you have another year under your belt of growth and development and improvement. And this was written by a writer at Saturday Down South. His name is Matt Hayes. He said that he had been speaking with several scouts and said that he can make the kind of significant jump that Joe Burrow made from 2018 to 2019. This is from the article verbatim. This is the critical and the current state of the quarterbacks at LSU. There are those on staff who believe that Daniels can make a significant jump, like I mentioned, in 2023, like Joe Burrow did in 2019. Multiple scouts I've spoken to believe the same thing. Now, I don't necessarily subscribe to that belief, to be completely honest with you. I think to compare any player to Joe Burrow just really is not fair. You compare someone to the best ever, and you're already setting them up for failure. But I think that does speak volumes about the potential that so many people on staff and even just casual observers of the program, the potential that they see in Jayden Daniels and the amount of growth that he's made just over a few months. So imagine the amount of growth that he can make over just 1 year. So that's the dilemma that Jayden Daniels is facing. Enter the NFL draft, make your money. There's going to be a market out there for you somewhere. Come back to LSU. Maybe risk injury. That's the downside. But also look at the upside of how much growth Jayden Daniels truly can make. But if Jayden Daniels does decide to come back to LSU next year, there is one thing that I feel that I know for certain in my heart. And I want to get into that coming up next. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Omaha Steaks. So this is absolutely insane. Omaha Steaks has cut their prices 50%. Almost like 50% for the holidays. So achieve gift giving greatness when you give the gift of perfectly aged, tender, and delicious Omaha steaks. So I have given Omaha steaks as a Christmas present before, and people always remind me year after year, hey, are you going to send me those steaks again? Because those are so freaking delicious. So give the gift of delicious steaks with Omaha Steaks. They've put together a delicious selection of various gift packages to make shopping for the ones that you love nice and easy. Who doesn't love that? So go to omahasteaks.com and take advantage of 50% off site-wide. Plus, use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, one word, at checkout to get an additional $40 off your order. Omaha Steaks, a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Again, visit omahasteaks.com, take advantage of the 50% off site-wide, plus use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $40 off your order. Minimum order may be required. Well, thanks for making Locked On LSU your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today. It's available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. So Jayden Daniels is faced with a really difficult decision, to be honest with you. He can decide to go back to LSU, add another year of development under his belt, improve his draft stock, and potentially get taken a little bit higher in the 2024 draft. Or he might just say, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to enter the NFL draft, and I will be willing to work my way up in any organization that chooses to draft me. But this is something that I feel very strongly about, that if Jayden Daniels does decide to come back to LSU for his final year of eligibility, Jayden Daniels will be the starting quarterback of the LSU Tigers. And I know that there have been so many people that have been just enthralled or were enthralled and very excited and thrilled and impressed with what they saw from Garrett Nussmeier in the SEC championship when Jayden Daniels did go out with an ankle injury and Garrett Nussmeier came in. I mean, I'm with y'all. I was impressed. I was thrilled. I was excited about what I saw from Garrett Nussmeier. But if Jayden Daniels comes back, it's his job for a few reasons. One, like I just mentioned, there are so many people on staff and just observers of the program that believe that Jayden Daniels can make significant leaps and bounds in his second year at LSU. And I don't think that's the craziest take, right? Like we've seen what Jayden Daniels did in just a few months. Over week, he improved. So imagine what he can do in another year, established in this offense, established with this team, in another year of knowing, okay, I'm the starter, I'm the guy, I know what I need to work on. I already have built so much chemistry with these receivers. Again, Malik Neighbors coming back, Kayshon Boutte coming back. You have another year of chemistry with these receivers. I mean, it's not crazy to think that he could improve even more in year two. And I think the second reason is we've seen what Garrett Nussmeier can do. We've seen the good. We've seen why LSU looked at Garrett Nussmeier and thought we want him to be part of our program. We saw that on two Saturdays ago against Georgia, 15 of 27, 294 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception against Georgia. He had that big 60-yard pass late in the game. I mean, there were things that I saw from Garrett Nussmeier that I thought, man, I wish LSU had that all season long. But one thing that you have to remember is that with Garrett Nussmeier, you get the good. You get those really risky, deep passes, bold passes, the kind of guy, the kind of mentality where, he gets off the bench, he says, okay, it's my time to shine, and I'm not holding back. I love that about Garrett Nussmeier. But that doesn't come without the bad. That doesn't come without the 2 interceptions against Southern earlier this season. Now, I mentioned all the growth that Jayden Daniels has made over the season. I understand that the Southern game was quite some time ago. And I understand that Garrett Nussmeier could have made all of these improvements over the past few months. And I think that he has. I think that he's worked on his decision making. I think that he's worked on his accuracy and that whole gunslinger mentality that he's been trying to kind of shake off of that not the mentality, but rather the reputation he's been trying to shake off and be more of an accurate passer, be a better decision maker. But I don't think that you get the almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns against Georgia without some of the bad sprinkled in there. I don't think that you get these big time passes, these great passes, these really, sports center top 10 type of throws and plays without some of the turnovers and without some of the interceptions. Those things come hand in hand. But I think when you look at what Jayden Daniels has done, yeah, maybe he played some safe ball earlier on in the season. But the experience that Jayden Daniels brings and the confidence that he has grown over the past year, I mean, I don't know how you can look at that and if he does decide to come back to LSU and not choose that over a work in progress, over a quarterback that just might not be refined yet. And look, I'm not at practice. I'm not in those walls. I don't see the kind of growth and development that Garrett Nussmeier has made on a day-to-day basis. All I can see is what we see on the field. And we've seen a whole lot of good. I was so excited. And so I was having so much fun watching Garrett Nussmeier play on Saturday night against Georgia. But remember that doesn't come without the bad. And I think with Garrett Nussmeier, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So, should LSU look for another quarterback in the transfer portal? Whether Jayden Daniels stays or not, I think that LSU would have to make up their minds. They would have a really difficult decision if they do decide to go after a quarterback in the transfer portal. What message that sends? And hey, what quarterbacks are out there to look for? That's what I'm getting into coming up next. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Built Bar. Okay, everybody stop what you're doing. Just listen to me for a second. You have to listen to me because you have got to try this. I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors just in time for the holidays. There's 3 of them. Cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, and the coconut brownie topper. They are delicious. Plus, there's white chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. There's the candy cane brownie puff. Built puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. So for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they're literally the best tasting protein bars ever. I promise you, the best protein bars ever built. No pun intended. They're revolutionizing nutrition as we know it. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, but there's 17 grams of protein, and they're low in sugar and calories. It's the best of both worlds. Low calorie, high protein, low sugar. Just sink your teeth into that first bite, and I promise you, it will change your life forever. I'm not kidding. There will be a time before you try these Built flavors, and you will look back on those times and say, my life wasn't as good. So, Built, you have got to try these bars. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. One word, LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. So, if Jayden Daniels decides to come back to LSU, I think that LSU might just be set at the quarterback position. If LSU Jayden Daniels doesn't decide to come back to LSU, who's going to be starting under center? And whether LSU decides to look for a transfer portal quarterback or not, whether that they look for a transfer portal quarterback with Jayden Daniels returning or without Jayden Daniels returning, I think that LSU is looking at a difficult conundrum here. Let's say Jayden Daniels does decide to come back to LSU. Great. I think that they have their starting quarterback. I don't believe that there would be a quarterback controversy. I don't believe that there would be a quarterback competition. I believe that it would be Jayden Daniels' job. And that's just simply my opinion. It's based on no fact. It's just how I feel. But if Jayden Daniels does come back, LSU football has to ask themselves one. Let's say, knock on wood, Jayden Daniels goes down and tears his ACL in week 1. Is Garrett Nussmeier the guy? Just in case Jayden Daniels does go down with injury, do they believe that Garrett Nussmeier can take over this football team and that LSU can reach the same amount of success and build upon the success that they had in 2022? And can Garrett Nussmeier be the captain of the ship that gets them there? That's a question that they have to ask themselves. I don't know the answer to that question. But if they do believe in Garrett Nussmeier, if they do believe, hey, if Garrett Nussmeier has to come in and be the starting quarterback, then we believe in him. Then wonderful. And I think LSU has their quarterback room made up. If Jayden Daniels does come back, he's named starting quarterback. Will Garrett Nussmeier stay at LSU? That's another question to ask. Will Garrett Nussmeier be okay within his third year at LSU? Will he be okay being the backup? Or will he want to transfer? He has every right to do that. And whether that's in this transfer portal period or whether that's in May, that's a question and kind of a pro and con that LSU has to weigh and that he has to weigh for himself. Is the best opportunity for Garrett Nussmeier to sit another year on the bench, wait for some opportunities, get as many opportunities as he can, backing up Jayden Daniels, or is his best opportunity to start right away elsewhere? That's another question. And if Garrett Nussmeier does decide to transfer, then LSU will have to go out and find another transfer portal quarterback. I don't think that they feel very confident in Walker Howard, maybe potentially having to take over as a starting quarterback in case something happens to Jayden Daniels, if Jayden Daniels decides to come back to LSU and not declare for the NFL draft. The other scenario there is, if Jayden Daniels does declare for the NFL draft, does LSU believe that Garrett Nussmeier is the guy? Does LSU believe, okay, Jayden Daniels goes to the NFL draft, great, we wish you nothing but the best. Garrett Nussmeier, you're in. You're our starter now. Do they feel comfortable with Garrett Nussmeier being the starter and Walker Howard being the backup? Maybe not. Maybe they still go out and get another transfer portal quarterback. Well, then they have to ask themselves the question of, are we looking for a quarterback that's willing to compete with Garrett Nussmeier for the starting job? Are we willing to go into the transfer portal and find a quarterback that wants to start right away and is willing to play himself into a quarterback controversy between Garrett Nussmeier and whatever quarterback that might be? That's a question that they have to ask themselves as well. So you see, there's so many scenarios here that completely depends on Jayden Daniels declaring for the NFL draft or deciding to stay. So many scenarios here. If Jayden Daniels does decide to stay, does Garrett Nussmeier want to stay? That's totally his decision. If he did decide to go elsewhere and pursue a starting job elsewhere, good for him. I'm not going to hold him back. But I think in more scenarios than not, it shows me that LSU most likely will have to find a quarterback in the transfer portal. Whether that's to compete with Garrett Nussmeier for the starting job, I think we've seen this past season, there's nothing wrong with a healthy quarterback competition. All it does is push one another. All it does is keep everyone on their toes and continue working hard. And not that they're not going to work hard without another quarterback there nipping at their heels. But I think that that's a healthy thing for a position group. And whether that's if Jayden Daniels does decide to come back, and they do feel like Garrett Nussmeier just needs a little bit more time, if in case he needs to come in. I don't see that necessarily being the case. I would say the one scenario in which LSU does not need to go out and get a transfer portal quarterback is if Jayden Daniels decides to come back and Garrett Nussmeier decides to stay. Then you just run it back in 2023 with the same quarterback room that you had in 2022. But in every other scenario, Jayden Daniels comes back and Garrett Nussmeier transfers. Jayden Daniels declares for the NFL draft, and Garrett Nussmeier needs some healthy competition or a more valuable backup with a little bit more experience. All of those signs point toward transfer portal quarterback. How will Garrett Nussmeier take that? If Jayden Daniels does declare for the NFL draft, Garrett Nussmeier is the only quarterback in the room beside Walker Howard. And, I'm not putting a lot of real estate into Walker Howard in this conversation that we are having, but that, of course, that is subject to change. I'm not in those rooms. I'm not having those conversations with them. I'm not seeing the progress that Walker Howard is making. I know that Brian Kelly has said that they are thrilled with what he's done so far, but I'm keeping him out of the conversation for now. Just for now, subject to change. So who is out there? If LSU, which I think in more scenarios rather than not, LSU should at least look into the transfer portal and see what options are out there. And there are so many quarterbacks in the transfer portal. It is crazy. When you look at Devin Leary, who is coming out of NC State, he's a 4-year player, not necessarily starter, the player at NC State. He has 62 touchdowns and just 16 interceptions in his career at NC State. He is the highest ranked quarterback in the transfer portal. You look at Hudson Card, which is probably a name that you're familiar with, coming out of Texas. And in 2022, he was 75 of 108, a 70% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns and just 1 interception when he came in when Texas's starter got hurt. And DJ Uyunglele is another name that's in the transfer portal. I'm not thrilled with what I've seen from DJ Uyunglele, and I think all 3 of those quarterbacks are going to be transferring into a program, or at least wanting to transfer into a program where they can start immediately, and they wouldn't be attracted to a quarterback competition. That's completely up to them. Luke Altmaier is the 4th-ranked quarterback in this transfer portal class, a 4-star out of Ole Miss. Jeff Sims out of Georgia Tech, who's got a heck of an arm. Drew Pine coming out of Notre Dame, which I was shocked that Drew Pine entered the transfer portal. He's another quarterback that I've really been impressed with after what I've seen from him this year. Spencer Sanders out of Oklahoma. He's one of the top 15 ranked quarterbacks in this transfer portal class. Would he be a viable option? I mean, the list, like, if you open 24/7 Sports, the list is just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I'm sure there's only going to be more quarterbacks that enter the transfer portal. So before I do a full, deep dive into these quarterbacks, before I do a full evaluation of who LSU should target and who would be a good fit for LSU, my first question is, where is Jayden Daniels going to be for 2023? And we'll continue to update y'all all week long. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen. So for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories in sports of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. But coming up in tomorrow's episode, we will chat with John Garcia Jr. We'll get a nice pulse on the rest of the recruiting world. What should LSU look at? Are some of these freshmen coming in the 2023 class, will they be ready to contribute to LSU right away in 2023? Plus, your questions on a Mailbag Wednesday. So make sure to get those questions in. You can send them in on Twitter, Locked On LSU, or Caroline Fenton 1. You can comment them on YouTube. Whatever questions you got, we'll get to those this week.